Here is ruthless law number 1. Never outshine the master. Sounds unfair. Sounds cowardly. Sounds like playing small. It isn't. It's survival and strategy. Let me show you how this trap works. You enter a room full of men who technically outrank you. Bosses, seniors, gatekeepers, mentors. You're sharp, prepared, competent. You answer faster, speak cleaner, solve problems they struggle with. At first they smile, then they stiffen, then something changes. The room cools, meetings stop inviting you, opportunities quietly pass you by. Feedback becomes vague, support turns conditional. You didn't fail, you threatened. Here's the brutal truth. Most motivational content avoids. People above you don't reward brilliance. They reward security. And when your competence makes them feel replaceable, they don't think, I should promote him. They think, I should neutralize him. Machiavelli wrote this plainly. Those who rise by making others feel inferior rarely stay risen for long, not because they weren't good, but because they were politically blind. Geniuses don't rush dominance. They camouflage it. They let others feel safe while they build leverage quietly. This law doesn't say be weak. It says be patient. Think of it like chess. You don't announce the checkmate while you're still developing your pieces. Here's how smart men apply this law without shrinking themselves. They do exceptional work, but let others take visible credit early. They speak with clarity, but leave space for others to arrive at the conclusion. They solve problems, but frame it as support, not superiority. Why? Because ego controls access, and access controls everything. Now listen carefully. This is where most people misunderstand the law and sabotage themselves. This is not about being submissive forever. This is about timing. You don't outshine the master until you no longer need him. The moment you have independent leverage, skills, reputation, allies, options, that's when the mask comes off. But until then, you grow in silence. Here's the mindset shift. Weak men think, if I prove I'm the best, I'll rise faster. Strategic men think, if I make those above me feel respected, I'll stay protected while I grow. Protection buys time. Time builds power. And power, real power, doesn't need applause. This law explains why some men stay assistants forever despite being talented, and why others, quieter and slower on the surface, suddenly leapfrog into leadership seemingly overnight. They weren't lucky. They were invisible until they weren't. Now let me give you a practical test you can use immediately. Ask yourself this before any high-stakes interaction. Does this moment require me to impress or to align? If the answer is impress, be careful. Impressing feeds ego comparisons. If the answer is align, you're playing the long game. Alignment creates allies. Impression creates enemies. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most people want recognition now because their identity is starving. They need to be seen to feel real. Geniuses delay gratification. They understand that being underestimated is often an advantage. As Machiavelli observed, men fear what they cannot predict more than what they can see clearly. So you let them think they understand you, while you quietly become something they can't stop later. This law alone explains countless stalled careers, broken alliances, and unnecessary enemies. But it's only the first layer. Because once you learn how not to trigger power above you, the next question becomes far more dangerous. How do you make others dependent on you without them realizing it? That's where law number 2 comes in. There's a moment, right before your life changes, when nothing looks different. Same room, same phone, same doubts. The only difference is this. A switch flips in your head. And once it flips, you can't unsee the pattern. Today I'm handing you that switch. You were never lacking talent. You were never missing intelligence. You weren't born behind. You were trained to stay harmless. And the people who rise, the ones you call geniuses, leaders, untouchables, they didn't get lucky. They learned rules you were never taught. Rules that feel uncomfortable. Rules that feel unfair. Rules that feel ruthless. That's why they work. Let me tell you something most motivational videos are too scared to say out loud. The world is not designed to reward effort. It rewards position. It rewards perception. It rewards control. And Machiavelli, yes, Niccolò Machiavelli, writing over 500 years ago, saw this with terrifying clarity. Not as philosophy, not as theory, but as a manual. While others asked, what is good? He asked, what works? And that question separates those who dominate from those who disappear. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you've ever felt invisible in a room, if you've watched less capable men get chosen over you, if you've wondered why being honest, kind, and hardworking didn't give you the life you were promised, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were playing the wrong game. This video isn't about becoming evil. It's about becoming effective, because effectiveness changes everything. In this series, we are breaking down 7 ruthless laws inspired by Machiavelli's thinking and echoed through the 48 laws of power that keep geniuses above everyone else. Not smarter, not louder, higher. But before we touch the first law, you need to understand the trap you're standing in. From childhood, you were handed a script. Be polite. Wait your turn. Don't offend. Don't stand out. Be grateful. Be humble. Sounds virtuous, right? But humility without power doesn't make you noble. It makes you forgettable. Machiavelli warned about this exact illusion. He understood that morality without leverage is just decoration. The world does not rise to meet virtue. It tests it, exploits it, then moves on. Here's the line that changes everything. Listen carefully. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands. Les hommes jugent plus avec les yeux qu'avec les mains. Translation: people don't reward who you are, they reward what you appear to be. And this is where geniuses separate themselves. They don't obsess over being liked, they obsess over being positioned. They don't ask, is this fair? They ask, does this elevate me? They don't wait to be recognized. They engineer recognition. Most people hear this and feel resistance, a tightening in the chest, a moral recoil. Good. That's the old programming panicking. That's the virus trying to survive. Because once you accept this truth, you can never go back to pretending the world is a meritocracy. And here's the twist nobody tells you. You don't need to crush anyone. You don't need to lie every second. You don't need to become a villain. You just need to stop being naive. Geniuses don't float above the world. They see the machinery. They understand that power isn't loud. It's subtle. It's quiet. It's arranged. And once you learn the rules, you stop asking for permission. In a moment, we're going to enter Law 1, the law that silently decides who gets protected and who gets sacrificed in every hierarchy on Earth. It's the law most people violate daily without even knowing it, and the cost is their ceiling. But before we do, I want you to lock something in. This is a motivational channel, but not the kind that lies to you. This motivation isn't about hype, it's about realignment. If you apply even one of these laws, your environment will respond differently to you. People will listen longer, interrupt less, test you carefully, and that reaction, that shift, that's how you'll know the transformation has started. So, here's your first instruction. Don't try to agree with everything. Don't try to be comfortable. Try to see clearly. Because clarity is the most dangerous advantage a man can have. And in the next part, I'll show you why outshining the wrong person can destroy your future, and how the smartest men avoid that trap while still rising. Most people get this backward, and they pay for it for the rest of their lives. The fastest way to ruin your rise isn't failure. It's being too visible to the wrong person. Every hierarchy has an invisible ceiling, and most men don't hit it because they're incapable. They hit it because they trigger the ego above them. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and it's still one of the most violated laws by intelligent, motivated men who think merit alone will save them. And that law is the reason certain men are never fired, never ignored, and never discarded, no matter how replaceable they seem on paper. Most people get this completely wrong. And in the next part, I'll show you exactly how. Power doesn't come from being impressive. It comes from being necessary. And the men who understand this never beg for relevance. They engineer dependence. This is Ruthless Law number 2. Make others come to you. Never depend on their goodwill. Most men think loyalty is built through kindness, through effort, through over-delivering. Machiavelli knew better. Goodwill is unstable. Dependence is permanent. Let me explain the difference, because this is where geniuses quietly separate themselves from everyone else. Goodwill sounds like this. He's helpful. He's reliable. He's nice to have around. Dependence sounds like this. We can't lose him. Nothing works without him. If he leaves, we're exposed. Which one do you think commands leverage? Here's the brutal reality. If people like you, they may praise you. If people need you, they protect you. And protection, not praise, is the currency of power. Machiavelli observed that rulers who relied on the affection of others were always one mood shift away from collapse. But those who made themselves indispensable created a buffer no emotion could erase. Now, listen carefully, because this law is often misunderstood and abused. This is not about hoarding information selfishly. It's not about sabotaging others. It's about positioning yourself at the intersection of outcomes. Geniuses don't try to be everywhere. They choose a choke point and dominate it. Think of any organization, any group, any system. There is always something critical that few people fully understand, control, or want responsibility for. That's your opening. Most people avoid responsibility because it feels heavy. Geniuses move toward it because it creates gravity. When you own the hard thing, decisions orbit you. Let me give you an example. Two men start at the same level. The first one tries to be liked. He helps everyone, answers messages instantly, fixes small problems, volunteers everywhere. The second one chooses one domain, something messy, something complex, something avoided. He learns it deeply. He improves it quietly. He becomes fluent where others are vague. Months pass. Who gets consulted when it matters? Who gets asked before changes are made? Who becomes risky to remove? Not the helpful one, the necessary one. This is why Machiavelli warned against relying on favors. Favors create temporary advantage. Necessity creates structural power. Here's the internal shift you must make. Stop asking, how can I contribute more? Start asking, what breaks if I disappear? That question changes everything. If nothing breaks, you're optional, and optional men are always one decision away from irrelevance. Now here's the part that makes this law ruthless. Once people depend on you, they will test you. They'll push, delay, assume availability. This is where weak men collapse. They think, they need me, so I must please them. Wrong. Once dependence exists, you set the terms. Geniuses combine law number 2 with law number 1. They don't outshine the master, but they quietly become the hinge everything swings on. And when leverage is established, they withdraw slightly, not aggressively, not emotionally, just enough to be felt. Silence becomes communication. Absence becomes pressure. Machiavelli understood this psychological lever deeply. Men value what they fear losing more than what they enjoy having. So the moment you're needed, your discipline matters more than your effort. You don't rush. You don't over-explain. You don't scramble. You let gravity do the work. Here's a practical application you can use immediately. Identify one area in your environment where mistakes are costly, knowledge is fragmented, responsibility is unclear. Move there. Learn it better than anyone. Document it. Improve it. Control the flow. But here's the key. Never announce what you're doing. Visibility comes later. At first you let results speak quietly. People notice when problems stop happening, when decisions get smoother, when chaos reduces. They won't say it out loud, but they'll feel it. And feeling precedes recognition. Now for the warning, because every ruthless law has a shadow. If you become necessary too loudly, you trigger resentment. If you wield dependence too openly, you invite resistance. The genius move is subtlety. You don't say, you need me. You let them discover it. And once they do, your position stabilizes. This is why some men survive restructures, purges, leadership changes, and chaos, while others vanish overnight. It's not loyalty, it's architecture, but there's a deeper layer coming. Because once you stop depending on others, once others begin depending on you, the next danger appears. The next danger appears. Visibility, attention, expectation. And that's where law number 3 becomes critical. Because the fastest way to destroy hard-earned power is to reveal too much, too soon. In the next part, I'll show you why concealment is not weakness, and why the most dangerous men in history were never fully known until it was too late. Most people expose themselves thinking transparency is strength. It isn't. And that mistake has ended more rises than failure ever did. The moment people think they fully understand you, you stop being dangerous. This is ruthless law number 3. Conceal your intentions. Most men reveal themselves too early, their plans, their ambitions, their next move. They think honesty builds trust. What it really builds is interference. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Power is fragile when it's exposed. The more people can predict you, the easier you are to block, slow, or redirect. Let me be blunt. Transparency is not strength in a competitive world. Ambiguity is. When people don't know what you want, they can't position against you. But modern motivation culture lies. It tells you to be open, share your goals, let everyone know your vision. That advice is harmless for spectators. For climbers, it's lethal. Here's how this plays out in real life. You announce your goals. You talk about your next move. You share what you're building. Suddenly, opinions appear. Doubts surface. Helpful advice starts flowing. Some of it is genuine. Most of it is noise. And buried in that noise is resistance. People don't sabotage you because they're evil. They sabotage you because your future threatens their present. So geniuses do the opposite. They move quietly. They let others talk while they listen. They let others speculate while they prepare. They let others underestimate while they assemble leverage. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler who cannot disguise his intentions will never complete them. Why? Because the world reacts to intent faster than action. Here's the psychological mechanism most people miss. When you announce your goals, your brain receives premature reward. You feel accomplished before doing the work. But when you stay silent, pressure builds internally. Silence creates focus. Disclosure creates diffusion. Now understand this. Concealment is not lying. It's selective revelation. You're not hiding forever. You're choosing timing. Geniuses reveal intentions after they're irreversible. Think about it. Moves that matter most, career shifts, power plays, exits, alliances, are strongest when announced after completion. By the time people react, it's already done. That's not deceit. That's strategy. Here's a rule you should burn into your mind. If someone can stop it, slow it, or influence it, they don't need to know it. Most people feel discomfort here. They think secrecy equals guilt. That's programming talking. Privacy is not shame, it's insulation. Now here's where this law becomes ruthless. The less you explain yourself, the more others project onto you. Some will assume confidence, others will assume authority, some will assume danger. All of those are better than predictability. Machiavelli understood that fear often comes not from what is known, but from what is uncertain. This is why silence unnerves people, and this leads to a powerful secondary effect. When you stop oversharing, people start seeking information from you. Questions flip direction. Instead of you proving yourself, others begin trying to read you. That's a power shift. Here's how to practice this law immediately. For the next 30 days, stop announcing plans, stop explaining decisions, stop justifying direction, replace explanation with execution. When asked, keep answers simple. I'm working on it. I'll share when it's ready. We'll see. Calm, neutral, unemotional. You'll notice something strange. People lean in. They speculate. They watch more closely. Attention increases when information decreases. But here's the danger, because every law has a cost. If you conceal without competence, you look empty. If you hide without progress, you look lost. Concealment only works when movement exists behind it. Silence must be paired with action, and this is where most people fail. They hide because they're afraid. Geniuses hide because they're building. Now we're approaching a turning point, because once you stop revealing intentions, once you become less readable, the next challenge emerges. People begin to test you. They push boundaries, probe reactions. Try to see where your limits are. That's where law number 4 becomes essential. The law that determines whether others respect your presence or slowly start stepping on your neck. In the next part, I'll show you why reputation is not built through words, why reactions are more powerful than arguments, and how silence, used correctly, can dominate a room. Most men talk themselves out of power. You're about to learn how to let the room talk for you. The first man to lose control in a room has already lost the room. This is ruthless law number 4. Always say less than necessary. Most men think power comes from persuasion, from explaining, from proving. Machiavelli knew the opposite was true. The more you talk, the more you expose. The more you explain, the more you weaken your frame. Because every extra word is a crack someone can pry open. Watch any high-status interaction closely. The men with real power don't rush to fill silence. They don't over-clarify. They don't defend themselves. They let others talk themselves into mistakes. Here's the uncomfortable reality. When you speak too much, you reveal what you want, what you fear, what you'll tolerate. And once those are known, you become predictable. Predictable men are easy to manage. Geniuses understand something subtle. Silence creates pressure. When you don't rush to respond, the other person starts negotiating with themselves. They fill the gap. They justify. They reveal motives. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a mirror. Machiavelli observed that rulers who spoke sparingly appeared wiser than those who explained endlessly, even when they knew less. Why? Because restraint signals control. Now let's expose the trap most ambitious men fall into. They think, if I don't explain, I'll be misunderstood. So they clarify, then clarify again, then defend. And suddenly, they're arguing from below. Here's the shift. Stop trying to be understood by everyone. Start letting people interpret you. Interpretation creates hierarchy. The man explaining is asking for acceptance. The man withholding is assumed to have reasons. This is why powerful figures often speak in short, measured lines, not because they lack words, but because they understand impact. Every sentence should either set a frame, close a door, or end a conversation. Anything else is leakage. Here's a practical example. Someone challenges you publicly. Old response: explain, justify, defend. New response: pause, then one sentence: I disagree. Or that's not accurate. Or we'll see. And then silence. No elaboration, no emotion. What happens next? The challenger feels exposed. The room feels tension. Eyes shift. Because now they must carry the weight. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill it because silence forces accountability. Geniuses let silence do the work. Now listen carefully. This law is not about being mute. It's about precision. Speak when it advances your position. Be quiet when it doesn't. And when you do speak, make it land. Short sentences, clear tone, no apology. Machiavelli warned that those who talk too much give their enemies the weapons they need. Think about that. Every unnecessary word is intelligence you hand over. Now here's the deeper layer. When you speak less, people start watching how you move instead of what you say. Your posture matters more. Your timing matters more. Your reactions matter more. You become unreadable. And unreadable men are respected, even feared, because they can't be easily categorized. This leads to a powerful effect. People hesitate before crossing you, not because you threatened them, but because they don't know what crossing you costs. That hesitation is power. But there's a danger here. If you master silence but lack boundaries, people will still test you. Which brings us to the next law, the law that determines whether silence becomes authority or invisibility. Because silence without consequence is just absence. In the next part, I'll show you Ruthless law number 5, the law that decides whether others respect your limits or slowly erase them. Most men fail here without realizing it. And once respect is gone, it's brutally hard to reclaim. The moment people realize there is no cost to crossing you, they will never stop. This is Ruthless law number 5. Guard your reputation with your life. Reputation isn't about being liked. It's about being respected enough to hesitate against. Machiavelli understood something brutal. Once people believe they can disrespect you safely, they will do it repeatedly, openly, casually, and without remorse. And most men lose reputation not in dramatic moments, but in small, tolerated violations. A joke you let slide, a boundary you didn't enforce, a comment you ignored to keep the peace. Each time you allow it, your reputation weakens, not in their words, in their calculations. Here's the reality. People are constantly running subconscious math on you. What happens if I push? What happens if I ignore him? What happens if I take more than I give? If the answer is nothing, you're finished. Geniuses understand this early. They don't overreact. They don't explode. They don't threaten. They respond once, decisively.
Because one clean response early prevents 100 problems later. Machiavelli warned that reputations are easier to maintain than to rebuild. Lose it once and you'll spend years fighting uphill. Now listen, this is where weak men get confused. They think guarding reputation means being aggressive, being loud, being intimidating. Wrong. It means being consistent. If something is unacceptable once, it's unacceptable every time. No exceptions.
no moods, no discounts. The man who enforces boundaries calmly is far more dangerous than the man who yells inconsistently, because calm enforcement signals certainty, and certainty makes people careful. Here's an example. Someone interrupts you repeatedly. Old pattern, tolerate, then resent. New pattern, pause, look at them, one sentence. Don't interrupt me. No explanation, no anger, then continue speaking. That moment resets the room. Why? Because now there's consequence, not punishment, clarity. Reputation isn't built by what you say about yourself. It's built by what happens when lines are crossed. Machiavelli understood that mercy without strength invites contempt. Strength with restraint creates authority. Now here's the ruthless part. Once your reputation solidifies, you don't have to enforce it often. People remember. They adjust before testing you. This is why certain men are treated carefully, even when they say little. Their past reactions did the talking. But here's the danger. Many men confuse patience with tolerance. They wait too long. They let disrespect stack. They hope it stops on its own. It never does. Disrespect accelerates when it's unchallenged. So here's the internal rule geniuses live by. The first violation matters more than the 10th. Correct early, correct cleanly. Then move on. No grudges, no drama. That's power. Now we're approaching a shift. Once your reputation is guarded, once silence, restraint, and consequence are aligned, people begin to treat you differently, and that brings a new challenge. Visibility, attention, envy. Because the moment you rise above the average, resistance follows. That's where ruthless law number 6 comes in. The law that determines whether attention elevates you or destroys you. In the next part, I'll show you why being hated is often safer than being loved, and how geniuses survive envy without self-destructing. Most people crumble here, and they never understand why. The moment you start rising, someone somewhere decides you shouldn't. This is ruthless law number 6. Court attention, but control the narrative. Power attracts light, light attracts scrutiny, and scrutiny attracts envy. Most men think obscurity is safety. Machiavelli knew the opposite. Obscurity is weakness. Uncontrolled attention is danger. The men who fall fastest are not the most hated. They're the most misunderstood. Because when you don't define who you are, others will do it for you. And they won't be kind. Here's the hard truth. When you rise above the average, people don't ask, how did he do it? They ask, why him and not me? That question breeds stories. And stories, unchecked, become weapons. Geniuses don't avoid attention. They shape it. Machiavelli observed that a ruler must be visible enough to be respected, but never so exposed that others control the image. This is a balance few men master. Most do one of two things. They hide, hoping success will protect them, or they overshare, hoping transparency will earn goodwill. Both fail. Here's why. If you hide, rumors fill the vacuum. If you overshare, critics dissect you. The solution? Selective visibility. You decide what is seen. You decide when it's seen. You decide how it's framed. This is not manipulation. It's leadership. Because leadership without narrative control invites chaos. Look at men who command respect. They are known for one or two clear traits. Not everything. Reliable, decisive, unshakable, results-driven. They don't explain their complexity. They simplify their image. Why? Because the human mind trusts clarity. Confusion breeds suspicion. Machiavelli understood that envy is inevitable, but direction is optional. So geniuses redirect attention toward outcomes, not intentions. They let results speak. They avoid emotional defense. They never argue character. If accused, they don't spiral. They ask one silent question. Does my position still stand? If yes, ignore. If no, adjust. That's it. Here's a critical distinction most people miss. Being loved makes you vulnerable to mood shifts. Being feared makes you rigid. Being respected makes you stable. Respect comes from consistency under pressure. This is why Machiavelli famously wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Not because fear is cruelty, but because fear is predictable. Love fluctuates. Fear respects boundaries. Now here's how this law plays out practically. Here is the final truth Machiavelli would never soften for you. Nothing changes until behavior changes. Insight feels powerful. Understanding feels mature. Agreement feels like progress. It isn't. Power only recognizes movement. This is why most men stay exactly where they are, Despite knowing better, they wait for confidence, they wait for clarity, they wait for permission. But confidence comes after action. Clarity comes from action. Permission never comes. Machiavelli understood that the world belongs to those who act while others debate internally. And now, this is where everything collapses into one ruthless rule. The final rule, unwritten but absolute: if you hesitate, you lose leverage. Hesitation is not caution. It is fear disguised as intelligence. The world moves while you're thinking. Someone else takes the seat. Someone else speaks first. Someone else defines the frame. And once a frame is set, breaking it costs 10 times more effort. So here is your activation. Non-negotiable. No overthinking. In the next 24 hours, you must violate one old pattern. Just one. Say no where you usually say yes. Stay silent where you usually explain. Speak once where you usually stay quiet. Stop sharing a plan and execute instead. Enforce a boundary you've been tolerating. Withdraw attention where it's been taken for granted. One move. That's it. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not after thinking about it. Because thinking is the old identity's last defense. This is what separates men who rise from men who consume. Consumers feel inspired, then return to routine. Builders feel discomfort, then move anyway. Discomfort is not a warning sign. It's confirmation you're leaving the old self behind. Machiavelli never asked if a move felt good. He asked if it worked. And here's the final mental shift I want you to lock in. You are no longer trying to be liked. You are no longer trying to be understood. You are no longer trying to be impressive. You are building position. Position changes how people treat you. Position changes how options appear. Position changes what's possible. And once position is established, confidence follows naturally. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't argue. The kind that doesn't rush. The kind that doesn't ask. Now listen closely. This matters. If you close this video and do nothing, nothing will change. Not because the laws are wrong, but because power only answers to action. So this is your final instruction. Close the video, stand up, and do the one thing you've been postponing because it makes you uncomfortable. Your old identity will protest. Let it. That's how you know it's dying. And when you return, because you will, you won't need another motivational speech. You'll feel it. The shift, the weight, the calm. Because once you move differently even once, you can never fully go back. Drop this final line in the comments, not as hope, but as declaration. I am no longer invisible. This was not entertainment. This was initiation.